Welcome back, Year 8. So in today's lesson, we're going to be covering this objective. So we're going to be looking at some of the tests that we can do in order to identify some of the main types of rocks and minerals. So we're going to look at 3 tests today: the Mohs hardness scale, streak test, and luster test. During this video, I'm going to give you a couple of definitions. So what might be a really good idea is that you actually write these down in your book because they're obviously going to be needed for flashcards later on. So maybe write them down as you're listening. The first test we're going to be looking at is the luster of a mineral. So the luster is just the appearance of the mineral according to the way that it reflects light. There are a lot of different words we can use to describe luster, or I guess almost how shiny a mineral looks. And a few of the ones that we're going to be using are if it's metallic. So that one's fairly self-explanatory. So if it looks like a metal, it looks really shiny and bright like you see when you look at metals. Is it pearly? All right, so that's a little bit shiny, but also I guess a little bit dull. So have you ever seen maybe your mums might wear pearl necklaces? So if they look like what those pearls look like. I'll show you some photos of that. Is it glassy? So does it reflect light just like glass does? This doesn't mean that it has to be see-through like glass. Sometimes it will be if it's glassy, but as you can see in our picture here, this mineral is glassy, but it's also black. It's also a dark color, but it's reflecting the light just like glass does. The other word we can use is it dull? All right, so this one would be dull. It's not really reflecting any light off its surface. All right, so the next test that we can use to identify minerals is looking at the streak. And sadly, this does not relate to Snapchat, so it's maybe not as exciting as you were hoping, but it's still kind of fun. So let's go. So here's the streak. So the streak of a mineral relates to the color that is left when you make that mineral into a fine powder. So the way that we'd make the mineral into a powder is you just rub it along a rough surface. So we do that with ceramic tiles. Now these tiles are white because that means we can more obviously see the color. So if we had a dark streak plate or tile, it'd be very hard for us to tell what color the powder actually was. It's quite interesting because sometimes the streak isn't what you'd expect. So if we have a look at this picture here, some of our streaks just look, if we have a look at the picture here, you'll see that this streak here is black, just like the rock or the mineral was. This one is green, just like that rock looks a little bit green, but some of them are really different to what you'd expect. So this rock or mineral is really black, but its streak is actually white. Okay, same with this one. This has got a red streak, but the rock is actually quite a dark, almost black color as well. So that's why we test the streak. It's not always the same as what the rock or mineral looks like when it's in a solid form. The final test that we can use to identify minerals is to look at their hardness. The hardness of a mineral refers to how easily it can be scratched. So when we're looking at the hardness, the Mohs hardness scale, it's basically just a scale that ranks the minerals on their hardness from 1 to 10. So the hardest minerals are ranked 10, so this means they can't be scratched pretty much, and the softest minerals are ranked number 1, so these ones can be scratched very, very easily. In fact, our softest mineral here is talc, and talc is so soft that you can scratch it just with your fingernail. Whereas diamond is ranked number 10, there's actually no other known substance that is harder than diamond, so nothing can scratch diamond. From this scale, we'll be able to figure out that diamond, because it's the hardest, would be able to scratch each of these minerals, all right, because it's harder than all of them. However, if we picked one, let's say we picked topaz. Topaz has a hardness of 8. This means that it wouldn't be able to scratch corundum or diamond because they're harder than it. However, it would be able to scratch every single mineral that had a lower ranking on the scale. So as I said, the hardness is determined by trying to scratch a mineral. Here's a look at a bit of a table that we'll be using in our attempts to identify some minerals. So we just have some common objects, so things like your fingernail, some copper pennies, steel nails, and we've got bits of glass as well. And you can try and scratch some different minerals. So you'll be able to see if your fingernail is able to scratch the mineral, that gives it a hardness of 2.5, which means it's very, very soft and it's likely to be either gypsum or talc. However, if you find that your fingernail doesn't scratch it, you could then try with the copper penny. If the copper penny doesn't scratch it, you'd then try with the glass plate. If the glass plate was able to scratch it, we'd know that it had a hardness of about 5.5, which means we're thinking it's probably one of these minerals sitting in here. I'll talk more about that in a moment when we're back together as a class. Alright, so you reached the end of the video. Well done. If you're still waiting for other people to finish, can you please work on doing your flashcards, or you can write notes in your book. So here are some of the definitions that you should be doing for your flashcards.